study, binase ni Joseph yung study niya dun kay Rosie Forel skill. So during his time, he was very limited lang sa mga devices na ginagamit niya. Most of Mercalli's informations came from personal accounts and observations of damage. So he assumed ang pinakadelikado na intensity of earthquake ay hanggang intensity 6. But then he realized that his study was not enough to measure the maximum intensity of an earthquake and does not provide enough precision. So, hindi na kontento si Joseph dun sa kanyang study na hanggang 6 lang. So, he thinks na hindi lang hanggang 6 yung pinakang delikadong intensity ng earthquake. So, again, ang earthquake ay it is the measurement of the strength. Ang intensity, it is the measurement of the strength of an earthquake. So, nami-measure yan by the reactions of people around or sa reaction ng tao, sa damage ng buildings, and etc. So, from 6, gaya nga nasabi ko kanina, originally, hanggang 6 lang talaga yung na-discover ni Joseph. But then, from 6, naging 10 yung pag-measure ng intensity. It is still from Rosie Forel scale, but in more detailed and accurate definition and explanation of each intensity. So, doon kasi kasi sa research or sa Rosie Forel scale, hindi ganun ka-detailed and hindi ganun ka-accurate yung definition ng or yung explanation niya ng mga intensity. So, mas pinag-aralan pa ni Joseph and mas in-improve pa niya yung pag-aaral niya. So, yun nga yung history ng Mercalli scale. Originally, Mercalli intensity scale talaga yung tawag sa kanya. And then from 10, it was expanded to 12 by the Italian physicist Adolfo Cancani. And after ni Cancani, it was rewritten by German geophysicist na si Heinrich Seberg. So, wala po din yan. And it was published in English by Henry O. Wood. And lastly, in-improve ni Charles Richter, yung naka-discovered ng local magnitude scale or ng Richter scale. And ngayon, it is known as the modified Mercalli intensity scale. And sabi nga dito, Mercalli intensity scale for measuring earthquakes which is still used today. So hanggang ngayon po ay ginagamit pa rin itong na-discover ni Joseph Mercalli. So next po. So ngayon naman pag-usapan natin kung ano ba yung pinagkaiba-iba ng intensity 1 to 12. So yan. So dito, from 1 to 3, intensity 1 to 3. Ito yung hindi pa ganun kalakas. Sabi dito, felt by very few people, barely not noticeable. Ang 2, nararamdaman lang on upper floors. So, di ba kung mapapansin nyo before, kapag nag-earthquake, may magpo-post agad na friends natin. And then, yung iba magsasabi na, hindi naman nila naramdaman, yung iba sinabi nila naramdaman nila. Maybe yung kaibigan natin ay nasa upper floors, kaya nila naramdaman din tayo. Maybe we're walking, ganyan, kaya hindi natin naramdaman. So, hindi po tayo manhid. Intensity to lang talaga yung earthquake na meron dun sa location natin. So, from 6 to 12 ay dito na nagsisimula yung kalbaryo ng earthquake. Dito na nangyayari yung mga damage ng structures. Yan, ganyan. So, sa number 4, okay. So, 1 to 3, no damage pa lang po talaga siya. Talagang reactions lang siya ng tao. And sa number 4, during the day, felt indoors by many, outdoors by a few. At night, some people are awakened. The sensation is like a heavy truck striking the building. So, ganun lang yung impact ng intensity 4. Ang damage lang niya ay dishes, windows, and doors are disturbed. Walls make a cracking sound. Standing motors, cars rock noticeably. So, sa intensity 5, felt by nearly everyone, many awakened. So, ang damage po ay katulad ng sa 4, some dishes, windows, etc. broken. A few instances of crack, plaster, and unstable objects overturned, disturbance of trees, poles, and other tall subjects sometimes noticed. Sa intensity 6, yan, sabi ko nga kanina, dito na nag-start yung may mga damages na structural, yan, ganyan. Felt by everyone, many people are frightened and run outdoors. There is slightly structural damage, some heavy furniture is moved, and there are some instances of fallen plaster and damaged chimneys. So intensity 7, everyone runs outdoor, noticed by persons driving motor cars. Damage. So dito po ay ah, marami na ang mga buildings na yan, tumutumba, nagka-crack, bahay natin, ganyan. So dito ay negligible damage in buildings of good design and construction. Slight to moderate damage in well-built or ordinary structures and considerable damage in poorly built or badly designed structures. Some chimneys are broken. So intensity 7, next po. Persons driving motor cars are disturbed. So ang damage po dito ay slight damage in specially designed structures, considerable damage in ordinary substantial buildings with partial collapse, great damage in poorly built structures. So, yun lang, naalala ko lang. So, bilang mga civil engineer nga, ay sabi dito sa intensity 7, ang the damage, konting damage lang sa specially designed structures, considerable damage or ordinary substantial buildings and with partial collapse, and great damage to poorly built structures. So, isa din sa kahalagahan kung bakit natin pinag-aaralan tong earthquake, so we can use mga kumbaga materials na talagang hindi naman pe-prevent, kumbaga prevent ka ng damage ng structures natin dahil sa earthquake. So panel walls are thrown out of frame structures. There is fall of chimneys, factory stacks, columns, monuments, and walls. Heavy furniture is overturned. Sand and mud are ejected in small amounts, and there are changes in well water levels. Sa intensity 8, sabi diyan, considerable damage to specially built structures. Buildings shifted off foundations, ground cracked noticeably, wholesale destruction, landslides. Ang damage po diyan ay damage po ay there is great damage in substantial buildings with partial collapse. So intensity 9, some well-built wooden structures are destroyed. Most masonry and frame structures are destroyed, including the foundations. The ground is badly cracked. There are bent train rails, a considered number of landslides at the river banks and steep slopes. Shifted sand and mud and water is splashed over their blanks. So intensity 11 and 12. Ito na talaga yung pinakang malakas na intensity ng isang earthquake. So example lang ng about sa difference ng intensity. Gaya na sabi ko kanina, yung intensity ng halimbawa ang epicenter ng earthquake ay sa Lipa. Yung intensity dito sa Batangas at intensity dun sa ibang lugar ay magkaiba. Kasi sabi nga kanina, sa paglapit mo dun sa paglapit ng location dun sa epicenter sa paglakas ng intensity ng earthquake, the intensity is progressively found to decrease as the distance from the epicenter or from maximum fault rupture increases. So, example ng kung naalala niyo yung binanggit ni Devin last time, yung sa Moro Gulf earthquake. So, ang intensity sa Siguroan, Quezon that time is intensity 8, while sa Manila and Palanan, intensity 7, while sa Quezon City, 6, sa Tarlac, 5, and sa Legazpi, 4. So, ang intensity or strength ng intensity dun sa location nyo nga ay nakadepende kung gaano kayo kalapit dun sa epicenter. So, meron po tayong panonoorin to na video para mas maintindihan ninyo yung pinagkaiba ng kada intensity. So, yan po.
Modified Mercalli intensity scale uses Roman numerals. Roman numerals are used with different looking than Richter scale, which does not use Roman numerals. It basically rates it scale all the way up. Here's what a one will. People don't really feel any movement at all. One on the Mercalli scale doesn't do any damage whatsoever. People don't even feel it. So what about a 2? On the Mercalli scale, people start to feel earthquake. Okay? But really, nothing happens in terms of damage. Now, at a 3, people outdoors might not feel anything at all, but people indoors, especially higher up, are going to definitely start to feel it. And no damage. At a 4, dishes, windows, things like that, doors are going to rattle for a few people outdoors, and now they can start to feel it if you're outdoors. Okay? Maybe some cars are going to park. Parked cars are going to rattle back and forth a little bit. So this is the first time that people outdoors can actually feel it. Up until this point, only people indoors are really going to be able to feel it. For 5, people are feeling it. People are going to get woken up by the shaking from that earthquake. But again, no real damage. At a 6, this is the first time we start to see some damage. So we can have broken glass. Okay, people can have trouble walking. Objects are falling down from shelves and things like that. Furniture starts to move. You might get some cracks in walls, but damage is relatively slight. Okay, there isn't a lot of damage here. So at a 7, if you have a poorly built or old building, those things can start to be. Newer buildings, though, are going to be okay. People are going to have difficulty standing. Cars are going to shake back and forth pretty bad. We're going to start to see some damage here. Okay. So at an 8, drivers are going to have trouble steering. Tall structures such as towers and chimneys are going to twist and fall. Then really well-built buildings are going to only suffer slight damage. Okay? You definitely feel it. There's going to be some damage, but slight damage to new buildings. Our older buildings that aren't structurally as sound are going to have some problems. Okay, now even our well-built buildings at 9 are going to get considerable damage. Okay, we can have pipes underground start to rupture. So up until this point, underground pipes were generally speaking going to be okay. And now we're starting to really start to see some damage, especially the newer buildings. Okay, at a 10, most is pretty damaging. Most buildings and their foundations are going to get destroyed. Some of the buildings, new and old, can be destroyed or at least damaged. And if we have any dams around, well, those can be seriously damaged as well, which can cause some issues. As you can see, we can have fires break out because of all the electrical things that are being destroyed. We're still going to have underground problems as well. And these fires can really start to spread through the city because now we can't put them out because our water is being stuck. Trying to put water onto a fire is going to be very difficult. So these fires can spread. Now, 11 is considered to be the strongest. Collapsing buildings, bridges being destroyed, underground pipelines destroyed. You're talking about pretty much the city coming to the ground. Okay? I mean every building. But 11 is basically as much damage as happened in the city. Then you're going to have really difficult time putting out fires because there's no water. One of the main killers of people is really after an earthquake, these fires spreading through the city that you can't put out.
So, ayun po, to discuss po the magnitude versus intensity, yung mismo pong pagkakaiba nila. Start po tayo na alam naman po natin na during an earthquake, the size of the actual earthquake and the actual shaking of the ground are two different factors that determine the impact of the earthquake, which is yun nga tinatawag natin na magnitude and intensity. Many people get confused and use both terms to emphasize the same thing, when both are distinct factors that evaluate two different aspects. So now let's start to differentiate the magnitude and intensity po. First, let's talk about the magnitude. So ano nga ba ang magnitude? So yan, magnitude is the measure of the earthquake size and remains unchanged with the distance from the earthquake. Magnitude is a quantitative measure of the actual size of the earthquake. So, ayun po, bali, ang magnitude is the measurement of the actual size of the earthquake. The size of the earthquake describes the potential radius of damage because of the earthquake. Ayon po sa PVOX, tumutukoy ang magnitude sa sukat ng enerhiya ng lindol mula sa focus nito at ito ay kinakalkula mula sa lindol na naitala ng instrumentong tinatawag na seismograph, which is yung pong na-discuss na po ni Devin last meeting. It is a pin and sheet arrangement where a highly sensitive pin is suspended over a paper or graph. The device is highly sensitive to any shaking produced. When the device is placed on earthquake-prone land, the needle of the device will shake in the event of shaking of the ground. The shaking of the needle produces waves or lines on the graph sheet. Thus, depending on the shaking energy, the waves produced will have greater amplitude and frequency. With greater magnitude, more waves will be produced. This is used as a factor to determine the impact of the earthquake, as with greater magnitude, greater potential damage will be produced. So proceed po tayo sa intensity. What is intensity? Intensity describe the degree of shaking caused by an earthquake at a given place and decreases with distance from the earthquake epicenter. Intensity is a qualitative measure of the actual shaking at a location during an earthquake. Modified Mercalli intensity or MMI scale, which is used to determine the intensity, assign a Roman capital numeral to the intensity of the earthquake, and it ranges from 1 to 12, which is yung biniskas po ni Diana kanina. Intensity is a measurement of actual strength of an earthquake. The strength is measured in terms of the damage caused by the shaking. This accounts for all the various types of damages produced in a region. In geology, intensity is a common term used to describe the amount of shaking produced in a given region by the earthquake. A strong earthquake produces more damage and thus has greater intensity. Intensity is measured using the modified Mercalli intensity scale, which is modification of the Rossi-Forel scale. The scale assigns a Roman capital numeral to the intensity of the earthquake. As the intensity measurement depends on the perceived damage, the intensity varies on the amount of damage produced in a region. The intensity varies from region to region, usually decreasing from the epicenter of the earthquake. Epicenter is the region that is directly hit by the earthquake, and we all know that naman po. No? So dito po, may makikita po natin kung ano talaga yung pagkakaiba ng magnitude and intensity. Sa definition po nila, magnitude is the measurement of the size of an earthquake, while the intensity naman po is the measurement of the strength of the earthquake. Base naman po kung paano sila masusukat, to measure the magnitude of the earthquake, a seismograph is used. While in the intensity naman po, yun nga po, in the intensity is measured by calculating the damage caused by the earthquake using the MMI. Sa value naman po, magnitude of an earthquake is a single number on the Richter scale. The intensity value is represented as a Roman capital ranging from 1 to 12 in the modified Mercalli intensity scale. Sa uses naman po, magnitude calculates the radius of the earthquake while the intensity values are used to design structures and building. Sa levels naman po, an increase in magnitude level indicates a 10 times stronger earthquake. The intensity levels decrease from the epicenter of the earthquake. So dito po may pamapanood po tayong video kung saan po mas malilinawan po tayo kung ano ang pagkakaiba ng magnitude and intensity.
Magnitude and intensity are both related to the size of an earthquake, but they each measure different aspects. Magnitude, which measures the energy released at the source of the earthquake rupture and is calculated using measurements from seismic instruments, is one single value. Seismic intensity, which is the measurement of the strength of shaking at a specific location, determined from effects on people, human structures, and the natural environment, produces a range of shaking intensities in different locations. Thus, unlike earthquake magnitude, which is the same for all locations, the seismic intensity you feel depends on where you are. Intensity is mostly controlled by three factors: magnitude, how big the earthquake was; distance from the hypocenter, intensity varies from place to place; and the local rock and soil conditions. Let's compare magnitude and intensity by using a light bulb as an analogy. The light bulb represents the location within the Earth called the hypocenter, where the earthquake begins. The magnitude or size of an earthquake is like the wattage of a light bulb. Just as the wattage represents the amount of power of the light bulb, the magnitude is related to the total amount of energy released by the earthquake's source. The intensity, or shaking level, is like the amount of light from a light bulb at any spot in a room. A small light bulb in one area of a room will make that area bright with high intensity light, but it will leave the distant areas of the room dim with low intensity light. So, a given earthquake has only one magnitude, but will produce different intensities of ground shaking, as shown on the USGS Did You Feel It intensity maps.
So that's all po. Thank you po sa pakikinig.